You are listening to the FORSCOM Frontline, bringing you to our soldiers on the front lines of readiness.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the FORSCOM Frontline. I'm Jeannie, and I'm your host. Today, I am joined by Major Bridget Fyle, who is a project officer for the Holistic Health and Fitness Program, also known as H2F. And H2F is the Army's primary investment in soldier readiness and lethality, optimal physical and non-physical performance, reduced injury rates, improved rehabilitation after injury, and increased overall effectiveness of the total Army. So that's a mouthful, and I know you are an occupational therapist by trade.
Yes,
Is that correct?
is correct.
Okay. So welcome, Major Fyle, and thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. And I know you're an OT, so just tell me a little bit about you, like where you're from, why, how long have you been in the Army, that kind of thing. Just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Minnesota, and I joined the Army I commissioned in 2011 through the University of Minnesota ROTC, and I have been in the reserves now since 2011, and I've worked primarily with combat operational stress units, minimal care detachments, and then my most recent position was as an OCT with a medical readiness training unit.
Okay, now what is an OCT?
An observer controller trainer.
Okay, gotcha.
So yes.
Awesome. So how did you get into the H2F program? Or maybe I should ask first, what is H2F? I know I gave kind of a technical explanation in the intro, but what is H2F and what does it mean to the Army?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that H2F is designed to increase soldier lethality. So we have technical, equipment, and we're gaining that. But at the end of the day, the warfighter is going to be what helps make or break a war. And so how can we take individual human aspects and maximize them to the fullest potential? And there's so much science behind that. That's why they created all these subject matter experts into this interdisciplinary team, so we can really help commanders be more lethal when it comes to fighting wars.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, you mentioned interdisciplinary teams. What exactly is an I have a really hard problem saying that word. Interdisciplinary team. And these are within the brigades, correct? Or they don't go all the way down to the battalion. They're just at a brigade level, right?
So it's a 22-person team that is assigned to a brigade. But we help not just the brigade, we help down to the battalion and company levels. So an interdisciplinary team is different professionals that combined up a team. They all have different subjects of expertise, and that's what creates an interdisciplinary team. So in H2F, we have strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers, occupational therapists, physical therapists, dietitians, and cognitive performance specialists. And then we work in collaboration with other health professionals that are also already organic to a brigade, such as chaplains, the brigade surgeon, the PAs, the medics, and the behavioral health officers. And so that kind of ends up being the entire team that we work with in the brigade. Okay.
And can you give me an example? I know you mentioned a plethora of people, some that you would not think would work together, like a dietitian with a chaplain and things like that. How do all of these personnel come together and collaborate to create or, kind of integrate the holistic health and fitness program?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what we've learned in professional sports and collegiate sports is that treating just one thing isn't going to give you the max outcome that you're looking for. So for instance, let's say somebody tears their ACL. That's a really long recovery. That's going to be about a year. And so we can have physical therapists helping to regain their strength and work on their coordination. And then let's say, for instance, they're just not feeling 100% confident. Maybe they're afraid that maybe they tore their ACL at a field exercise or during a run, and they're not feeling confident to go back out into the field on uneven surfaces because that's where they tore their ACL. And so we can, OT or CPSs can kind of work to help regain their confidence and their ability to be more confident on their knee. And then because it is such a long rehab process, we also want the dietitians to be involved because maybe they're not working out as much as they used to. So how can they maximize maintaining the muscle mass that they had or helping to decrease inflammation based on what they put into their body? And then when we look at the chaplains, they can help develop the values or reinstill the values and goals that that person has, and to help them still find that sense of connection and meaning as they go through this process. And then we coordinate with the brigade surgeons and the PAs to help communicate with the leaders, hey, this is a year-long process. This isn't going to be, they'll come off of duty in 2 months. And to help leadership have a better expectation of when this person is to return to duty.
Okay. Wow. I mean, and that's amazing. That especially since you have all of these people who come together to come with, basically a holistic, approach to making this person healthy, and based on one, you would think it was a simple injury. My husband actually tore his ACL many years ago, and it was a long recovery, and they didn't have anything like that 18 or 19 years now. So about 19 years ago, he had tore his ACL, and he ended up getting screws in his knee, and he couldn't jump for a long time. He eventually went back to jumping, but I would think, especially here at Fort Liberty, home of the airborne, that could be, detrimental to someone's mental state, that they're love jumping out of airplanes and they can't do that anymore. So have you seen like maybe an increase with non-airborne units versus airborne units here at Fort Liberty, like a difference in that with something like the ACL tear?
That's a really good question. I can't say specifically off the top of my head that I know for sure. I do know that CIMT presented their new, most recent up-to-date return on investment metrics, and that they are showing that H2F is having a reduction in MSKI profile rates, and they're having significantly lower rates of MSKI profiles over 90 days. And so we're seeing comparatively units with H2F are having reduced musculoskeletal injury rates than non-H2F units. Okay. And so I can't.
And that's kind of what I'm asking. I'm getting more like deep into the analytics. I like to know like those weird little, things that people probably wouldn't normally ask.
Yeah.
So and that's fascinating that you talk about the analytics of H2F versus in units and in non-units. How many units across FORSCOM have the H2F program integrated? Is that something you know?
Yes. So currently we have 37 fielded. Because of how popular and how meaningful commanders have found this to be, is the Army has actually accelerated their plan to field H2F to their original 111 brigades. Of those 111 brigades that are going to receive H2F, FORSCOM is going to receive 59 H2F teams.
Okay.
Yes.
That's exciting. Now, and you said these are already slotted, like each brigade already knows that they're going to get it. It's not like, a soldier listening can say, hey, I think this would be a really good program for our unit. They can't just go and request it. They
can't request the human performance teams. Well, they could always request it.
Okay.
I'll never say that you can't request it. But what I would say is that there is the FM7-22, the manual that lays down a lot of these principles that human performance experts are utilizing come from that FM 7-22. So if you wanted to learn more about sleep, or if you wanted to learn more about nutrition, all of those important basic foundational knowledge is in that FM. And so we're seeing units that don't have these human performance teams still implementing H2F by having different people be identified as these H2F experts, and or collaborating maybe with some of these human performance teams to implement those items into their unit.
So even if they're doing like one or two, I believe you called them pillars when we were kind of talking before. Tell me a little bit about pillars, because that's what I'm thinking is like these little pillars are being integrated into the units by people who may not actually have the human performance team. So that's what I'm guessing you're kind of getting at, is that they'll take like, what is it, mental readiness or maybe sleep readiness. These are, in integrating those couple of things, maybe not the entire program, but those one or two. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So there's 5 different domains. They're pillars of H2F. And again, kind of going back to that holistic interdisciplinary team approach, is that you can improve one, but when you can have 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, or 5 out of 5, you're doing really well. And so those pillars are mental readiness, sleep readiness, physical readiness, spiritual readiness, and nutritional readiness.
Okay.
And so if you don't have an H2F team, you kind of have some you have some of these people that we work with already integrated, right? We have a chaplain in all the brigades and down to the battalions.
There's your spiritual.
Yeah, we also have behavioral health officers. Mm-hmm. So we still have some, not as many, but we have some that you can utilize. Also, the installation usually has different resources that you can access. So the Army Wellness Center has the bod pods and the in-bodies and the dietitians that you can reach out to, or the R2 Performance Center. They have cognitive performance specialists that you can reach out to for team trainings and things like that. They're not naturally embedded into the brigade, but there are those resources that are available if you don't have the H2F teams. I think one of the benefits of, and one of the things that they found and why they've put them at the brigade level, is when you can really integrate into that unit. Their culture, their training, their op tempo. That just allows these H2F professionals to really be more customizable to that unit, knowing when they're going to the field and what their sleep operations and op tempo look like, and when they have these big training events coming up, and how are they going to feed them? Are they going to need double rations? Are they going to, how do we train them to not be dehydrated? Or how can we test hydration levels in the field, right?
Right.
You start to see them embed and mesh into the culture better than being an installation asset. But again, even if you don't have that human performance team, you do have the resources available that you can access.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's amazing. So, say I was a soldier who didn't have, a H2F team in my brigade, and I wanted to, you mentioned a few resources, but say I wanted somebody to kind of help guide me in these 5 pillars. Could they reach out to the H2F team here at FORSCOM to kind of get guidance or resources, or is this something that they totally have to do on their own?
No, they could absolutely reach out to us to ask, and maybe we could connect them with another team or help to guide them in the questions that they have. We're more than happy to do that.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, because I looked at that FM 7-22, it's 244 pages. And, I kind of skimmed some of the things that we had talked about. So I kind of have a little bit of knowledge on that. So, but I can't imagine reading the whole thing. And I'm sure you have several times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess my next question is, we talked about the 5 pillars. What is your what do you think, I'm not going to say the most important, but like maybe your favorite pillar that you feel is important in the overall system?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm going to say I'm biased. I'm an occupational therapist, so we sit in the mental and sleep and some of the physical, but when I was working down at a brigade as an occupational therapist, I looked at the formation and thought, okay, how do I get after mental and sleep? And then looking at the research, is the lowest hanging fruit would be improving sleep. I can't improve your reaction time. I can't improve your emotional control. I can't improve your cognition if you're not sleeping. And so sleep being the baseline and the basic foundation that's needed in order to improve and optimize that cognitive and mental pillar. And so I think it's a huge advantage for and an area of opportunity for soldiers and for the Army as a whole is to address the sleep and how to operationalize it. So from an individual responsibility of finding that routine and being consistent and maximizing and trying to get as close to 8 hours of sleep as you can is ideal. But then we also have to look at organizational culture and organizational operations. And because personal responsibility is an important aspect, but it's only a aspect when we look at the context of life overall. And so when we start looking at organizational culture, everybody has a boss. And if the culture expects you to sleep less and less, then you're going to feel inclined to do so, even if that's not giving you optimal performance. And so I think from every aspect of the military, operationalizing and improving sleep is going to give us the biggest bang for our buck currently.
Okay. So, and I find it fascinating that you think sleep is so important. So I have kind of two questions that kind of came to mind. The first is, I've heard for years that females need more sleep than males. Is this true? And how is that incorporated into H2F when you're trying to develop these plans that have, both males and females in their ranks?
Yeah, so I can't say that I know for sure. I do know it's slightly more, but everybody's individual, right? So it's less male and female maybe, but there are some people that maybe only need 7 hours and some people that would benefit from 9 hours. The best way to decide if you're getting enough sleep is, how do you feel when you wake up? Do you feel well rested? That's probably the best way to identify, are you getting enough? And maybe if you're not feeling great when you wake up, then maybe you're not getting enough, a way to tell. I think one of the other interesting things, kind of to your point of how do you operationalize some of this, is that from like 18 to 25 year olds, a little younger, 16 to 25, because of your age, you're more inclined to be more of a night owl, or you'll have a shift to be a later stage. And so one of the impacts that they've seen is doing like reverse cycle PT. So people can sleep and fall into their normal chronotype without having to get up early and be sleep deprived. So let's say you're more of a night owl. Well, if you're just not sleepy until 10, 11, but you're still having to get up at 4 or 5, you're naturally going to have some of that sleep deprivation, where if you could show up to work at 8:30, 9, and you do PT at the end of the day, that could help to mitigate some of the sleep deprivation that you might see in units.
Okay. And has this been implemented in some of the programs in the units? This reverse, what did you call it again?
Reverse cycle PT.
Reverse psycho PT. Okay. Has that been implemented anywhere?
Yeah. So
Okay.
some units have actually implemented it before going to the field. So 2 to 3 weeks before going to the field, they'll do a reverse cycle PT. And the idea is that they know when they go to the field, they're going to have sleep deprivation. The goal before going to the field is to try to sleep bank. So trying to maximize the amount of sleep that you can get. So that way, when you go to the field and you're sleep deprived, you're not having as many detrimental effects to that sleep deprivation because you've essentially banked up some sleep.
Okay.
So you can still function more optimally when you're out in the field, maybe not getting the amount of sleep that you would like to have.
Right. And has this been effective? Like, have you seen like the data analytics on it, like that this is an effective, way before going into the field?
I have not seen anything on it, like specifically.
Okay.
I would love it if I would love to see
if somebody did a study on that.
Has
I mean,
done a
it
study
sounds
on it.
fascinating. Like, I would love to bank some sleep. I mean, this could be great for new parents. I'm just saying.
Yes.
So, no, I find that fascinating. And I kind of went off on a little tangent there for a second. My second question is, recently, as last week, General Donahoe released a memorandum. You're shaking your head. You know what I'm talking about, where I'm going with this, that any soldier that is on staff duty is required a minimum of 4 hours sleep. What do you think about that?
I could not be more happy to see leadership putting in these fatigue management policies to really try to increase the safety. And really, it comes down to safety of the soldiers leaving after staff duty. To kind of what you were talking about is the memo kind of points out that when you're sleep deprived, you are equivalent to having a blood alcohol content of 0.08 or 0.1. And so letting somebody leave staff duty and drive a vehicle is unsafe.
It is.
Right, when we think about it. And so I'm really, that is something that is just so exciting to me, to see leadership making a change that's really going to benefit the health and safety of the force. And I couldn't be happier to see that culture starting to change regarding sleep. And I think that's
as soon as I started with his name, you knew exactly where I was going. I saw you completely light up. So I know sleep is very important to you. That's one of the things that we had kind of talked about. So, on that note, like, is there anything else, within the program you think our listeners should know that we might not have touched on? I think we hit some of the most important things, but you're the expert. So you tell me anything else that we might want to close out with.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
You're like, I was talking for an hour before this started. No, it's fine. And, I don't have like any specific, questions other than, this program has been found effective. And I wanted to do this podcast as, I wanted to kind of do it last month, but our schedules didn't line up. That May was Mental Health Awareness Month. And I know as we move later into the year, we'll have suicide prevention awareness in September. So I feel like this program works with the units, with the soldiers, with the leadership, the interdisciplinary team. I am never going to get that word right. To create this environment for soldiers to be the best warfighter that they can be. So, I mean, that's really all I have. So if you have anything to add on to that.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with everything that you said. And yeah, if you have those human performance teams, or even if you don't, read the FM 7-22. It really does a good job at breaking a lot of the things down on what are these principles. And maybe just read a page of it or a couple pages of it and try to take some of those principles back with you. It's a lot to try to do it all at once. And so taking bite-sized pieces and trying to implement it within your unit or within your life. And then how does that translate, right? So if you start to prioritize sleep, or if you start to prioritize your mental health or your physical health or even your spiritual health, we know that that's likely going to flow over into your relationships outside of work, or even your interactions with your family and to your kids. And so I always say one of the examples is going back to sleep and how this could impact your family, is that you should have a consistent routine every night. And so your body knows and how to prepare for sleep. And people will say, well, I don't have 60 minutes to wind down by myself. But you don't it doesn't have to be a wind down by yourself. It absolutely can be a time to connect with your family, whether that's, bath time with the kids and then reading a story. That's still a routine that helps you, helps your kids, helps your entire family to have that consistency. And so focusing on this, just having a soldier change, can also have an impact on their significant others, their family, their children. And
probably even on the soldiers that they work with too, when they see a difference in this individual, and then it inspires, and it's kind of a domino effect to where now the unit is healthy as a whole. So I think it's fascinating. So I think this is a wonderful program. I'm glad to see that the results have been very positive, and that FORSCOM is getting 59 more teams on board. I think that's going to make a difference in our ranks in a big way. So I don't have anything else. I just want to say thank you for coming on down here today and talking to me. I haven't done a in-studio interview or podcast before, so I really enjoyed this. I find it very fascinating. So I just want to say thank you for coming down here and sharing your knowledge, and thank you.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm Jeannie, and we'll see you next time on the front line.